things to say.
Okay, I'm sure you might think something will come back later on. Same with other people as well.
Can I just abuse my position as co-chair? I'm part of the discussion with Tim, who I know has got another commitment. So, is it possible for Tim to have his say? He was a part of what happened.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to leave immediately, but quite happy for a big back I think it's important to see why I and a lot of other people in the libertarian wing of this party, the left libertarian wing of this party, I've been a libertarian communist since I was 19, right, are great concern about any motion that comes from the National Party that implies that a local party should be doing something, that it shouldn't be doing itself. Now, I know the Right Party pretty well, and I know that there are still things that need to be done to make the connection between the councillors and the members of the party as good as they are. You know that as well as I do. I think lots of people do that. Well, I'd like to see more responsive, more libertarian, more reporting. But I do think it's a lot better than, I observed other parties, it's a lot better than other places. It's a lot better than some of the large Green group parties, for that matter. But it still needs to move. But the decision on what should be done and how the Green Party, should influence its councillors as elected is primarily and initially a decision and a debate for the 500 members that are members of the Green Party. And that's a very important principle, and that's something that I think that we abandon and resist. I think it's important that comrades in Green Left understand where people like I am coming from on that, and the great importance we put to grassroots democracy and grassroots decisions of that nature. That's absolutely fundamental. So, having said that, of course, I hijacked the conference with a clever speech that made a change. That's what politicians do. If you don't like that, grow up, because that's what you will do when you get the chance. That's what I will do when I get the chance. Because that's how you make change and influence people in that kind of democratic situation. But I did it honestly because I honestly believe that in that libertarian sense. The other thing I would like to say is, I've spoken to Joseph Healy this afternoon. He also wrote to Andy Hewitt. I don't think Joseph left because of this. He'd already left actually before the discussion on the emergency motion. I spoke to him last week. I pleaded with him not to leave the party. I think it's a great loss. He's a bit like Joseph to leave the party, as it was happening, as you said. But I think we need to consider there were lots of reasons. Lots of things have been happening in the party.
Tim, I'm going to ask you to wrap up on that point because we want to get
those
back to
people,
that.
this wasn't the reason, this was perhaps the straw that broke the camel's back. But think of it in the round, consider it from the point of view not just from the immediate reaction of people, but thanks Alan, but also from the view of those people in the party who hold the importance of not having a national party, whether it's the national executive or the national conference or whatever, dictating to members on the ground making their own decisions to belong to the party.
Yeah, I think there's many of us who appreciate the difference, the fact that we are not whipped, the fact that we're not as there were some occasions where I may not have voted the exactly the same way as others, and it would have discussed very through. What I would like to say is there's many in this room who are not on the libertarian communist side of politics at all. But we would appreciate that conversations could go forward and be discussed. When you say, as a federated party, that it's up to our councils, when we went down to discuss and debate with them, Jason Kitcat himself agreed that whatever happened in Brighton would have far-reaching consequences for the whole of the National Party. He agreed that. All of the other Green councillors agreed that, and the members of the Brighton and Hove Green Party agreed that. They didn't agree with your position there. Yes, we do appreciate and protect the federated sort of nature of what we do on a local basis, but the fact that we have some responsibility to each other must always be important. I'm abusing my position, Chair, but this is a more casually organised meeting. Did I have anybody? I had Jonathan, Essex, and then we might come back via, if you've got James, and then Peter again, and Peter Murray. Is that you? Jonathan?
Yeah, on the
Could you stand up, because your voice is very much down.
I'm a councillor in Surrey. On the night when Brighton were making their decision, after our meeting, one of the Tories, actually the vice leader, whatever you call it, deputy leader, came along. He's a bit nasty person. He was basically saying, you've got a big night tonight, haven't you? And Brighton, I didn't know that it was the budget night in Brighton. But they knew. The Tories in Surrey were clear about what was going on, and he was smiling. They had a long time for what they did in Brighton, and it wasn't a Brighton thing. It was the National Party had an influence in what happened in Brighton for the Labour Party and for the Conservative Party. So if they consider it as a national issue, I think we should consider it as a national issue as well. This afternoon I've been well confused. I didn't read all the emails on Friday, because on Friday I was travelling up here and I was doing other things as well. I was led to believe that the reason we voted in Brighton for the 0% by a couple of people here today was because if we didn't, there'd be a no confidence motion and we'd no longer be running the council. Now, if that's not the case, then I think we should be clear within the party that that's not the case and have the opportunity, not in fringe, but in the main hall before we leave, to have that discussion, make that clear. So everyone leaves the conference with the same idea as to what happens in Brighton, rather than there being whispers and fringes with different views. I joined the Green Party because of climate change, because I believe not that we can win over on climate change by running the country, but by us being about influence. So it's about puppets rather than kings. I mean, yes, we have the opportunity to be a king sometimes, but I think it's more important not to follow either leadership ambitions or media aspirations, but to stand with integrity, to stand for what we want to achieve in the long term, rather than what we want to do in the short term. So, Surrey Tories, 2.99% increase. That happened before Brighton. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew that in Surrey, which was another authority which is the upper tier, they couldn't afford a zero cut in Surrey. That's a Tory council. There's only been one non-Tory elected in MP sense in Surrey since 1911. So it's fairly Tory. Let's say the Labourers were led by the Tories on this one. They knew what they were doing. They knew the game they were playing with Labour. We need to be a bit more cute politics nationally and not be led by a local party with a few people deciding that it wants to do something different. So yeah, it feels like we're embedded with the Tories, although they're the invisible partner and they don't get any of the blame. So I think we need to be quite clear in the next week what the media messages we're putting out of this conference are. They need to be clear and the same from everyone across the UK, although I agree with the principles of localism that Tim has set out. I believe I set up an enterprise called Local United for my sins, and I think in this we should be locally united. We should be considering what happens in all areas on the basis that if all act together and do that, we'll have a better future. I believe with that in climate change, but I also believe in that in terms of our approach to austerity. I don't know what we do next. I'd like us to be imaginative. I'd like, if we're a prophet rather than a king, we would be inspiring and telling stories rather than telling it straight. So I'd like us almost, can we create some parables around this? Can we sell it to the newspapers? Can we create like a non-compliant budget for Brighton and get Bill Randall now, or Jason Kitcat when he takes over as both leader of the council and leader of the local green group? Is that conflict of interest? I don't know. To write a letter on hidden note papers to a number of bankers, requiring them in the age of austerity. The last one, which was this severe, was Victorian times, with the same level of inequality between rich and poor. At that time, it was philanthropic giving which made the cuts not so severe. So maybe we need that. We need the private sector to bail out Brighton. And we could do that in a heading note paper. And if Jason and Bill and the others are committed as we are in the Green Party, as members led by our membership of the Coalition of Resistance and the like, then I think they should be active in campaigning and making this issue known in a different way. Otherwise, the absence of such campaigning, I think, would lead us in the wrong light. So I hope there might be some imagination that comes out of this meeting today.
kind of backing the council up until Thursday. I just felt that we walked into a bit of an ambush, and that kind of, I suppose, tallies with what Jonathan has been saying. But I think the important point is, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? You know, we are where we are. We have to try and move things forward. I was at the meeting at lunchtime, and there was some argument, let's say, about the cuts. Jason Kicker and the councillors were there, and Alex was there, and so on. And my feeling is that the worst thing that we could possibly do is get into some sort of fight within the party about this. Because, to be honest with you, I don't think we'd win it. We didn't, and I know what the mood of that meeting was like this lunchtime, and we were in a minority when the councillors said, we are there to protect the people who voted for us. And I think if we kind of get into a straight fight on that basis, which I wouldn't want particularly to do anyway, but if we do, I think we lose within the party. So we actually have to think, how do we move forward from here? Now, obviously we don't know exactly what's going to happen. A lot of things could happen in the next 12 months. There might not even be a Green-led council in 12 months' time. But we have to think about, where do we go from here? A straight fight for me is not the answer. It's not going to resolve anything. It's only going to create more problems for us as a national party. So what do we do about it? And I think that's the challenge for us. And I think, you know, some of the things you said about thinking outside the box, trying to do something. I thought that, for the very least, I think that my good feeling from listening to those councillors today is that they're there for the long haul. They're going to stay until their term's up, 2015 or whatever. They're not going to pack it in. They're going to stay there. So given the fact that they're going to stay there, what can we do about it? I work in the anti-cuts movement locally. I'm getting the flack from people from the Socialist Party and other people who are sort of, you know, having a go at me because of Brighton. I'm finding it very difficult to defend, but we need to think kind of quite creatively about what we can do about this and how we can try and turn that around. And just a couple of things to finish off. I think we have to put an awful lot of pressure on Brighton Council to really prove that they were different. They said they were different. I think they've not done enough to rally the anti-cuts movement. We need to put pressure on them to do a lot more about that. They talked about writing letters that were ignored. That's not good enough. They've got to do more than that. But I thought that a couple of things that Molly Scott-Cato said at the meeting were quite interesting. Looking at alternatives to raise money to make things better for the people, right? She talked about government bonds, local bonds, which is what they did in New York when they were bust to rebuild the subway system. She talked about a local currency, which is another option. And I really think that we've got to push this stuff, you know, if the councils is right and different, and I think if they do want to make a difference, we've got to start looking at some radical alternatives. What can we do?
I just would like to, I just would like to say something about the meeting that we had this morning and compare it to our visit, our trip down to Brighton. The first thing I said in the meeting was we should all go around the table, Green-led and the councillors and Brighton Hopers, and say what it was that made us join the Green Party. I gave out stickers so that they were little children, bright Green Party stickers, we had that to start with. And that sort of helped to set the scene. But I think the meeting that we had earlier, I mean, what I said actually at the beginning of that meeting, after we'd said why we joined the party, was out of this discussion, what we really want to be the winner is the Green Party of England and Wales. This has to be a thorough, open, comradely discussion. We need to know, we don't know what your position is, we don't know what your thinking is. We want to see if you agree with us that what you do down here has crucial ramifications for the rest of the party. All of that, open discussion. But what happened in the meeting here today, and there's lots of people who haven't been maybe keeping up to date with everything, they filled into this room. It's fantastic we've got 23 Greens, obviously, in any council, winning by the first past the post system. And they want to find out what's happening. These are people who are tramping the streets, leafleting, canvassing, all of that work they're doing. And you don't want to say to them, you're wasting your time, you get in and you can't really do anything, and it's just all dreadful, might as well go home. Nobody wanted that meeting to come out with some sort of negative type feeling. But it was a rally, I would say. It was a rally, and it wasn't a discussion between equals in the room. And what I was hearing, personally my view, from Jason and from Matt Follett, was a gross spin doctrine of what they've done. Now, I know what it's like to work on the budget, and you work very, very hard, and you see things that very lazy councillors won't bother seeing, and you are pleased that you've done it, but there might be a difference between knowing you worked hard and being quite pleased that you found something, than to feel smug or proud or arrogant about what you've managed to achieve, or then to turn around to fellow Greens and try and pretend that it's a really green budget that includes such severe cuts in it, and that going over the next year and the year after, it's going to get even worse. And I thought that we were being sold something there instead of spoken to as equal members of the party. And I think that that's the problem. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case any of you thought any differently. I don't know if you did. So next round we'll start with Steve and anyone else who... Oh, was it you? Was it your hand up?
Yeah, I had my hand up.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you were pointing at somebody. Right, well, Pete, you've been waiting the longest.
Well, no, I just want.
And then we'll come along the
I just want
front row, and then anybody else.
just want quickly to say that, as far as I remember, Green Left have agreed to hold its next meeting in Brighton on April the 14th. Now, I'm thinking about whether that should be a public meeting rather than the Green Left meeting, and what we could do with it. I liked Howard's suggestions of discussing alternatives rather than just having a bash the councillors meeting. That's not going to get us anywhere. But a public meeting staged by Green Left, possibly with support from CORE and other people in Brighton in April, is I think something we could organise towards. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. 1, 2, 3, and then back to you, Pete.
Tom Harris, Staffordshire Green Party. In May last year, I became the first Green Party councillor in Staffordshire, a county, a very conservative county, 1.1 million people. And so, obviously, I'm not going to be facing the kind of difficulties that the councillors in Brighton had for some time, probably about deciding about doing a budget or whatever. First thing I want to say is that I find the idea of communists, okay, that's one thing, but for a libertarian, it's liberté, freedom, for somebody who claims to be into freedom, to have stood up and stifled a debate about an issue which, in this age of austerity, the worst for 80 years, at our conference, at a time when a national policy, which has been backed time and time and time again, of resisting the cuts, to then stand up and say, let's not have this debate, actually, because we shouldn't. I found, extraordinary at best. And I hope that the next time that Tim stands up and wants to make a point about a national policy, that somebody reminds him and says, well, hang on a minute, let's not debate national policy, because it's up to every local party to make up exactly what they want to do, because there's no point, is there, because we're all free. Come back to Brighton Council. I know from experience, to get one person elected, it takes 100,000 things to go right, with a team of dozens of people and a shed load of work, hard work. If you are absolutely potty, then you'll try and do that as Green Party councillor. And if you're very lucky, you might even win. To have got the number of councillors elected in Brighton to forward the party the way that they've done is extraordinarily admirable. So 1 million or 100 million or 1 billion things have gone right brilliantly for the party. One thing has now gone evidently very wrong. But I would urge all of you to think very hard about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, to turn around to Brighton Council and say, right, that's you lot, you've had your chips now, off you go. They've made now potentially a rut for their own back. They're going to have to live with cuts. It's not going to be any fun. From what I hear, I don't really know anyone in Brighton Council, from what I hear, nobody's been enjoying it. It's not been a fun party for some time. We have to learn a lesson from this. We're a young party, relatively, we've come to terms with power and these sorts of things. Cock-ups will happen. Let's not rain on our own parade. Let's not ruin everything. Let's be constructive. Let's find where we can work together, because the main problem is, what we mustn't forget is, the people who we are against, it's not the people in this room, it's not the people in this conference, it's the people out there in, the Conservatives and the Labour and the Liberal Democrat conferences that we have over the next few weeks. So please do think, okay? Constructive, working together, moving forward. That's what I want to say.
Steve Duran, Manchester Green Party. I'll try and be brief. A lot of what Owen has said has been kind of said in other ways. As an anti-cuts person, and pretty much on the libertarian end of socialism and communism as well, what bothers me more actually, given that the Green Party is not an overtly left party, it's only left by default of the others being socially divided. And that's fine. And I'm not actually in the Green Party for that, even though I'm a leftist. My problem with this is that it's politically short-sighted, not that it's just anti-cuts. And I would like to think that's why Caroline is plainly uneasy about it. And I would very much like to think that's why Alex is plainly uneasy about it as well. And Jonathan has given solid testimony that we've walked right into one there. And, as many leaflets and as much earnest canvassing and all the rest of it as they have done, it strikes me that, upwards of a dozen, 15, 20 people have basically walked into a trap. And it's daft, and we've now got to live with the consequences of that. Part of the consequences of that, for me personally, I will not be trumpeting that I'm a member of the Green Party at any anti-cut stuff that I do, or any kind of community quasi-anarchist activism that I do, or whatever, because I think we have to recognise now that we're not an anti-cuts party, because people can point and say, when you're in power, you are agreeing with the Labour and the Conservative parties. There are things. Sure, it's a very complicated dynamic to be the first party to be in a ruling position but not in a majority position. We could have painted a picture that we were basically bullied by the same old, and put out the leaflet saying they would embed the Tories, etc. I don't want to go too much into what might have been. We've got to stay with what is now, and I'll stay in the party at least for now, because there are candidates that I believe in Manchester, and a candidate number one on the list from the Northwest, whoever it happens to be. When the result is out in 10 days' time or whatever, I want to work solidly to get someone in to the European Parliament, and I know that I will believe in that individual, and that's reason enough for me to continue, and so that's my kind of contribution to the movement of solidarity, etc., etc. But I think it would be a bit lame of me to sort of blabber on, oh yes, we are an anti-cuts party, when we're voting for cuts and putting through cuts. Just a couple of things that get kind of part of the spin. Oh, it's a 99% green budget. I've got Liberal people that I know, Lib Dem people that I know who parade about, this government has implemented 70% of the Lib Dem manifesto. It's garbage, it's just something that they make up to cover up for the fact that they're in bed with right-wing filth, And that's that. The other thing that you will always hear is, the difficult decisions of government. It's often said in a very patronising way, to be quite frank, to the people who have done just as much donkey work down the years as anyone who's elected, to be frank as well, right? But it's a very difficult position. You couldn't possibly understand how hard it is for us. It's what they all say, the war criminals say. right? You got, it's not even funny, you know, there's several 100,000 dead people in Iraq. I know they don't matter because they're brown and they talk funny and all that, but they're dead, right? And that was, oh, it's